Welcome to Fox Soul's Black Report, your daily source of black news, black views, and black opinions. Today is Tuesday, May 17th, and I'm Mimi Brown.
I'm Romeo.
I'm Demi Lobo, and on today's report, new details today have emerged on the mass shooting that took place in Buffalo that killed 10 people and injured 3. We have that story. Meanwhile, Reverend Al Sharpton is calling on President Biden to hold a national summit on hate crimes to bring black, Jewish, and Asian leaders together. Then a viral video shows a Lyft driver in Pennsylvania kicking a white couple out of his car after he heard racist comments.
Plus, Wendy Williams is eyeing a podcast deal with a payday that could go into the millions, and Kendrick Lamar is taking his album on the road. So much we have all that and so much more. This is our voice and our truth, so let's get it.
We're learning new details today on the mass shooting in Buffalo. The shooter reportedly had plans to continue his rampage if he had not been stopped. Buffalo police say the shooter had plans to drive further into the neighborhood to shoot more black people. They believe he had plans to go to another store. He also considered attacking a church or an elementary school before settling on the supermarket. The information comes as investigators dig into his 180-page manifesto posted online. In it, he lays out in detail his motives and plans for the attack. He said he had been radicalized by reading an online message board and subscribed to the Great Replacement theory, which is the false belief that white Americans are being replaced by people of other races. We're also learning today that he had plans to carry out the attack on March 15th, but postponed it several times. Now, during his planning, he stopped by the supermarket several times, even speaking to that security guard that he later killed. You know, what I found interesting, honestly, about this whole situation is that he was planning this for so long. I know we said that yesterday, but to actually visit the supermarket in March, he was there for about 4 or 5 hours, to the point where the security guard asked him, you know, I've seen you come in and out. What do you want? And he said that he was conducting census investigations or census data for, you know, the Census Bureau, which of course we know is a lie. And I just got to thinking, I was thinking, you know, had this been a black man who went to an all-white town and sat there for 6 hours or however long he was there, they would have called the police on him. Yeah. They would have asked him what you're doing there. Like, he would have never, I mean, we are such a welcoming people, sometimes to our detriment. You know, no one thought anything of it. You know, even the security guard, even though he asked him, I'm sure he didn't ask him in a way where, like, you need to leave. It was just kind of like, okay, I'm noticing you're going in and out. So it's just really interesting how he was able to pull this off and the planning that went into it.
You know, I don't know if we don't know specifically, but for some reason I feel like there probably was someone that kind of was like, something seems a little off, but I don't think anyone is ever expecting for something of this magnitude to happen. And yesterday, Mimi, like you said, he did spend months planning this. I do not believe that he was all alone on this. For some reason, it's just too well planned out. I don't believe that he was just able to do this much and not have anyone that he was talking to or getting advice from. But two things I want to add. So he evaded a state red flag law. So pretty much what that means is last year he was held for a mental health evaluation. And so when you are being held for a mental health evaluation, which he did say in his statement that he didn't have mental health, but he was held for a mental health evaluation. And so you're not supposed to be able to get a gun when you do that. So he evaded that and pretty much lied in order to get a gun. So that's an issue. The second thing is he wrote on a school project that he wanted to commit a murder-suicide as a joke. So it's really that every sign was there. Every sign. Him coming the day before, that was a sign. But Mimi, back to your amazing point, we're so welcoming, and no one ever thought that this would be what he was putting all of this stuff together for.
No, you never do. And as they do more research and look deeper into maybe his cell phone records, a laptop, computer, if he has that, they'll see if he's connected and who else was helping him. Because I don't think he did it alone as well. Here's a man that came back in March that checked the exits within the store, went down every aisle. It was like he was just really just piecing and planning it all out. And it's so unfortunate that this plan worked this way. We lost a lot of lives. And, you know, you think about the other things that he wanted to do if they would not have stopped him. Again, we have to go back to when we talked about this yesterday. They approached this man and still had a gun in his hand after killing 10 people. If that was a person of color, I don't think he would be alive today. We wouldn't be talking about having a court date on Thursday because he would not be here. Yeah. I'm not saying that's the thing to do, but look, we've died for things less than this, right?
Yeah. You know, one point I wanted to make about that security guard and kind of what you said, Romeo, he went down every aisle. He cased the joint so well that he knew the exits, he knew everything. And so they are hailing this security guard as a hero because with him, he lost his life, but by him exchanging gunfire with the killer, he alerted everybody in the store that something was going on, allowing them to either hide or run or whatever they needed to do. So that's just, you know, that's very, very sad that he lost his life, but he saved so many others in the process.
And he will absolutely be remembered. And actually, that's in line with our next story here. Meanwhile, President Biden and the First Lady, they're in Buffalo today, meeting victims and family members of people gunned down during Saturday's mass shooting. And the Bidens, they laid flowers at a memorial for the 10 victims. And Mr. Biden, he's condemning bigotry and the shooter's actions.
In America, evil will not win, I promise you. Hate will not prevail, and white supremacy will not have the last word.
And during his speech, the president called for stricter gun laws. He is also urging Americans to reject racism and embrace the nation's diversity. So President Biden had a very hard job here. He had to acknowledge this mass shooting and acknowledge this tragedy. But also, this was a moment that he had to speak to these loved ones. He also had to, some kind of way, add in some type of presidential language in there. You know, him condemning assault-style weapons. So that was good. So he had to touch so many bases, and I do think that he did a really good job. He acknowledged every single victim by their name. He let the people know the heroic acts that those people have done in their lives, acknowledged their contributions to the world, and reminded those families. He said something really powerful. He said the day is going to come where you remember him or her when it brings a smile to your face, because he acknowledged his own personal tragedy, losing children. And so I think that the president coming to you, talking to you in that way, it does feel some kind of relief, but also just doesn't bring your loved one back.
Very little comfort.
I mean, I'm glad that President Biden went there. You know, that's what presidents do. That's what officials do. Governors and mayors, that's what they do. They lend words of encouragement. But I feel like we've heard this speech before, and we continue to hear the same speech over and over and over again. And what needs to be done is they need to pass some sort of gun laws, because what he was able to do, to your point, even though he missed that red flag law, but the gun was still legal. He was able to buy it. Although he modified it, he was still able to buy it. And until they actually do something about that, we will continue to have stories like this over and over again.
I agree. And there's conversation, which I hope there's more conversation of this, of the way they treat gangs and gang-related situations. They should start treating the same way as hate crime. So when people are doing this, they should follow them. They should monitor it. They should get the same kind of penalty. So we're hoping that that's something they talk about moving forward, for sure.
Romeo, and just talk about really quick about moving forward. We talked about the administration cracking down on ghost guns, and they have been trying to put some language out there to cut down on assault-style weapons. So I do believe it doesn't happen overnight, and I do believe after this happening, but Mimi, back to your point, I do what you're saying, see what you're saying as well, that we're reacting after it happens versus being on top of it so that to prevent it from happening.
We're always reacting after it happens. And exactly what you were saying, Romeo, about tracking. Listen, he said he was radicalized in these chat groups. Why are we not monitoring the chat groups? But we're monitoring rap lyrics. You know what I mean? Like, we've got special gang forces and all sorts of things that will go in and tell you what you rapped about. But what about these chat rooms where these young people are being you know, their minds are being, they're so impressionable, and people are able to go in there and turn them.
You're absolutely right, Mimi. I think the only thing, if we were just, if I was to play devil's advocate here, you're talking about one rapper, we're talking about Young Thug, and I hate to switch
but it's not just one rapper.
But I mean, but we have one rapper who's making his own lyrics about something. This, when we're talking about a chat room, we're talking about hundreds of people that are under fake names and things like that. It is a little bit harder to track versus one rapper saying what he did to somebody.
But I don't think it's one rapper. Like I said, they have gang units that literally monitor Instagram and rap lyrics and all sorts of things, but you have no one, or I'm not saying you have no one, I'm sure they do, but maybe they need to increase the funding for those people who are monitoring the chat groups so that they can catch things like this.
It's happening way too often. Absolutely. All right, moving on. Joyce Beatty, chair of the Congressional Black Caucus, says thoughts and prayers are not enough. She is pushing Congress to take action in the wake of the Buffalo mass shooting. The Ohio Congresswoman is calling on fellow lawmakers in the Senate to abolish the filibuster and pass a House-approved gun control bill. Now, back in March, the House passed a bipartisan Background Checks Act. Beatty said the Senate must end the Jim Crow era filibuster and pass legislation that will save American lives. The bill has been stalled in the Senate because of GOP opposition.
Meanwhile, Reverend Sharpton is calling on President Biden to hold a national summit on hate crimes. Sharpton says one way to change America's climate on racism is to change the tone of race. The Reverend says Biden should call a national summit or meeting of Black, Jewish, and Asian leaders together to talk about the rising number of hate crimes in the country. Sharpton says the Latino and the LGBTQ plus communities should also be a part of the conversation.
Investigators say accused Buffalo mass shooter Peyton Gendron mentioned the white supremacist talking point of the great replacement theory, in his manifesto. So Congresswoman Liz Cheney, she says that it's a growing theory on the far right Republican fringe of her party that says that has been supported by GOP leadership in the House. And the replacement theory, it claims that Black, Asian, Latino, and immigrants are being used by the Democratic Party to take power away from white people. Now, Cheney, she also says that GOP leadership in the House enabled white nationalism and anti-Semitism by punishing extreme House members.
President Biden's approval ratings, they keep sliding. A new NBC News poll says Biden's approval rate has only 39%. Concerns about the inflation, right? That's what the concern is. And the economy and border security are bringing his numbers down. Early this month, the president's approval number was 42%. But there is one positive for President Biden. 59% of Americans approve of how he's handled the pandemic. The poll shows that Americans rank the cost of living, the economy, voting rights, and abortion as the top 4 issues facing the nation.
And the Biden administration is easing restrictions on Cuba. Flights from the U.S. will now be allowed to go to cities beyond Havana. And every 3 months, the State Department will lift the $1,000 limit on money sent by people in the U.S. to families in Cuba. It will also allow more Americans to interact with the Cuban people through authorized group people-to-people visits. The restrictions were put in place by former President Trump. The changes followed last year's protests on the island nation and here in the U.S.
As Americans deal with high rent and home prices, the Biden administration is hoping its new plan to create more affordable housing will help. The administration will use existing federal funding to encourage state and local reforms to use zoning and land policies. The White House will also improve federal financing for multifamily housing as well as money for new single-family homes. U.S. home prices are currently surging and they are 20% higher than they were a year ago. Meanwhile, rental prices are also up 20%, but that's compared to what they were 2 years ago.
Illinois has a Black woman on the state's highest court. Lisa Holder White will be the 4th District Appellate Court's first African-American female justice, and White will be sworn in around the same time as Ketanji Brown Jackson, who will be on the U.S. Supreme Court in July. White's term will only be for 2 years. She is replacing retiring Judge Rita Garman. White says she plans to run for a full term in 2024.
And 20 million people could go hungry this year. That's according to the United Nations officials. They say severe drought is driving food prices to the point that humanitarian groups are having a tough time buying food to feed people in the Horn of Africa. The drought has been declared a national emergency in Kenya. Between 80 and 90% of reservoirs and dams are drying up in the largest northwestern part of the country. UN officials say if they don't get assistance from rich countries, severe malnutrition could hit the region within the coming months.
Florida death row inmates will be treated more humanely. A U.S. District Court judge last month approved a settlement for a federal lawsuit filed by prisoners against the Florida Department of Corrections. The lawsuit challenged a decades-long program of isolating people on the state's death row from other prisoners. Now, this agreement, it will allow eligible inmates to spend more time outside of their cells. The inmates will also receive increased mental health care, prison reform, and activists say that inmates on Florida's death row are often placed on permanent solitary confinement that can last for decades.
In New Jersey, Camden County, officials are settling a lawsuit with the black man who was left paralyzed after an assault by cops 8 years ago. Xavier Ingham received $10 million from the county. That's the largest ever payout for a police abuse case in the county's history. Ingham's attorney says cops injured him in a foot chase in 2014, then failed to provide medical assistance when his legs went numb. His lawyer says cops jumped on the client even after he laid down on the ground to allow them to handcuff him. One officer reportedly placed their boot on Ingham's neck and intentionally stepped down forcibly, making him cry out in pain. His lawsuit also claims officers moved him without stabilizing his spine. The experience left the father of 4 completely paralyzed. Officers also alleged that Ingham was in possession of heroin and handgun, but those charges were dropped after evidence was presented that the drugs and weapons were planted. Ingham is now a quadriplegic who gets around-the-clock care at the nursing home.
And a Dallas parent was arrested after his son went to a neighbor's house with a whip and aggressively banged on the door.
Little boy, you better get your ass from off my porch beating on my door like this. I will call the police. You need to leave. Don't you ever beat on my damn door like that. Go. Okay.
This happened on Friday. Apparently, the kid was upset with a young girl who lived there and wanted to confront her. After the kid leaves, another video captures the confrontation between the black dad and the white child's father, Brian Brunson. The black dad tells Brunson about his son's behavior, and the man pulls out a gun and begins to shoot. There were no injuries, but officers say the bullet almost hit Brunson's daughter. Brunson was arrested and booked on felony charges of deadly conduct. He bonded out the same day. After watching this, I had so many questions. Why does a 9-year-old have a whip? Where did he get the whip from? And I was wondering how he went to the door and he was just so confident swinging that whip on that black family's door. And then when the dad went across the street, oh, I realized he got it from the dad. Like that family, like the way the dad was talking to the man when he was literally saying, okay, your child came over here and damaged my car. Because on the way out, after the mother sent him packing, he hit their family car with the whip and damaged the car. And the dad just had a nonchalant attitude. You know, it's racism is taught. You are not born racist. And the fact that this little boy had the chutzpah to go to this family and hit their door with a whip.
Yes,
Come on now.
bold. That's definitely pretty bold. And you think about, like, they don't want teaching in school about what happened in the history, right, in the past with black people and people of color. We're talking about the critical race theory, things of that nature. Because at some point, if we can teach the young generation, maybe they can question their parents, what's going on within the household, when their parents use certain words or when they suggest certain things. This should have never happened. And I always think of the TV show Fear Thy Neighbor, because they have to live through this, right? So we don't know if this is going to get better or worse. Are they going to talk it out? We don't know what the outcome's going to be. So I definitely hope that things get better between the two.
Yeah, you know, the racism and the white supremacy is at an all-time high in this video for sure. Maybe just piggybacking on what you were saying about getting the whip from the family member, but how did he know that this would be offensive to black people? Like, that's what I want to know, too. What are they telling this little boy on how a whip would be disrespectful and how that would make a black family feel? Not to mention, when he goes back to the family's home, the father, like you said, no remorse at all. Did the father send him? Because also it's kind of like, why didn't he take any responsibility for his young kid going to anybody's house? Because we're told you don't go to somebody's house. You don't just walk up to somebody's house. No. You do not. Regardless of race, you do not walk up to a person's house, especially with the whip.
Not like that.
Not like that. And why did the white father, feel so comfortable with just pulling out a gun immediately? Like, that was his first response. It was not even, let's discuss, let's talk about it, or I don't even want to hear about it. He literally just pulled out a gun. The black guy said he had the gun as he opened the door. So he came in hot, ready. You know,
they probably have just already been upset and talking, and then the kid internalized it and wanted to, I don't know. Well, we'll keep you posted, Soulmates, on that story. So an Arizona white man accused of strangling a black woman to death on a public bus is in police custody today. So this after a week-and-a-half manhunt for Joshua Bagley. He's been charged with first-degree murder and the death of Diane Craig. Phoenix police said Craig was found on a bus unconscious. They say she got on the bus with Bagley, but the bus driver says that they were the only 2 people on the vehicle at the time. He says that he heard them making a noise in the back, but didn't really think anything was going on. Police say Bagley strangled the woman with the straps of her handbag. The driver says he discovered her body when he came back from a bathroom break.
A Lyft driver in Pennsylvania says he kicked a white couple out of his car after a woman made racist remarks. Take a look.
Hello. For Jackie, right?
Yeah.
How are you?
Yeah, you're like a white guy.
What's that?
Are you like a white guy?
Excuse me?
Are you like a normal guy? Like you speak English? Sorry. Sorry.
No, you can get out of the car. I'm going to
What?
cancel a ride. That's inappropriate.
So the couple went on to call him racist names, including the N-word lover. James Bove, the driver, says he only did what he felt was right. Now, the video has gone viral with more than 3 million views just on Twitter alone. Lyft also reached out to this driver, thanking him for, quote, shutting down hate and upholding their no-tolerance policies. The couple owns a bar in Pennsylvania called Fossil's Last Stand. Since the incident, their website and Facebook pages have been deactivated. Their Yelp and TripAdvisor pages have also been shut down for negative reviews and one-star ratings. Lehigh Valley police say they are investigating the case. I do applaud this man, young man, what he did. And you just think about, you just never know who you're in the car with. So whether you're the one that's calling an Uber or Lyft, or whether, like I said, you're the driver and you're experiencing that, this just once again just showed you that people are bolder than ever, I think.
Yeah.
I feel like during the Obama administration, like people felt like we were moving forward, making progress. And when Trump, I feel like he gave them that pass to be bold and be loud and be heard. And it's just very disgusting, man. But I applaud him for what he did.
Yeah, this is what you call an ally. This is exactly what allyship looks like, right? Like, he had nothing to gain, nothing to lose, but he stood up for what was right. And that's what we need.
Mimi, I literally have ally written down on my paper here because I agree with you 1,000%. This is absolutely an ally, an allyship, anti-racism, all of those things. Because honestly, for people who just don't like white people, you think that every white person is not going to support us and have our back in times like this. So really happy that he did this. Also, it was really good to know that he took this ride because a lot of people that drive Uber and Lyft, they need that money. That's how they pay their rent. That's how they pay their bills. So he could have just laughed it off like, oh, okay, whatever, I'll just take you to your destination. But he said, no, sis, you can get out of this car right now. So applaud for this man, because he didn't care that the money was coming in. He cared more about what was coming out of this woman's crazy mouth.
Agreed.
And to the people across the world who are leaving those comments and going to their business and making sure that they're known for being racist. Yeah, it'll affect you in your pocket. The family of Virginia teen wants justice after they say their 18-year-old son was assaulted and racially targeted at a party. Jerry Chambers Jr. says the incident happened in September of 2020 when he was 16 years old. He says he got drunk and passed out at a party. Chambers said days later he saw pictures of himself on Snapchat with white power symbols and racial slurs written on his head with a Sharpie. He was also draped in a Confederate flag. Powhatan police say they now know who was responsible for the act, but they are prevented from obtaining an arrest warrant because of a state penal code.